Action Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today I want to briefly talk with you about the current state of the Georgia race, and I'm not just meaning polls, I'm talking everything. I think one of the biggest flaws I had when covering the 2020 election was fixating so much on the polls when I should really have covered a wider breadth of things, and I'm not going to miss that opportunity with Georgia. Now, as you can see, I can't really pull up stats because I'm kind of throwing this video together on the same daily basis I do an Election Corner video on, so enjoy whatever public domain footage I found of people casting votes. So, let's start off with just the money of the situation. Money is very important in races. They buy you ad time, they mostly buy you ad time, but they also buy you campaign events, they buy you not vote counters, vote getters, people to go out, canvass at people's doors, etc., etc. Now, this is essentially a way to make up for enthusiasm, the enthusiasm gap, which we'll get to in a moment, but starting off with just money, the GOP is outraising Democrats 4-1. That means the GOP has 400% in their PACs of what the Democrats have for their two candidates. Now, here is an important note. While the GOP is outraising the Democrats, this number isn't perfectly explanatory. First off, the GOP number mostly comes from big money donors. We're talking donations of 5 to 6 figures to their campaign funds, while Democrats are vastly outraising GOP in small dollar donations. These are like $10, $20. What you, watching this video, probably donate to a race for the entire campaign. So there's that difference there. Already we're seeing the GOP donate large quantities of money from a small number of donors. But also, really importantly, the Democrats are also donating to outside groups. This is like Stacey Abrams' group, Black Lives Matter, Black Votes Matter, and the like. People who turn out votes who aren't considered Democrats. They are theoretically nonpartisan organizations. They will register Democrats and Republicans and are just focused on the get-out-to-vote efforts. However, because they mostly target African-American voters or left-leaning voters, they end up turning out vastly more Democrats than they do Republicans. So already we're seeing, while the GOP has more money for ads, we'll have to see how effective that is because we're going to get to the enthusiasm gap, which right now actually seems to be in favor of the Democrats. However, it is slight. And I'll get to that, why that is in a moment. You see, the Democrats, like I said, they've got a lot more small dollar donations. That's a lot of money coming in for them and showing individual people care enough about this race to put money into it. However, that doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from in-state. There are plenty of people in California, in New York, in D.C., in Illinois, who are donating money, Indiana, donating money to the Democrats to help them win the race. That doesn't mean it's all coming in-state. As long as you're an American, you can donate, theoretically, to any American race. At least at the federal level. I know there's some minor ones with local and state stuff. But, yeah, you can donate to affect the outcome of the race. Very sorry, still have that cold. Now, over to why the enthusiasm gap is slightly in favor of the Democrats. And that is for one big reason, and we are going to talk about the polls briefly here. Raphael Warnock is probably going to unseat Kelly Loeffler in the special election race. He is doing incredibly well in the polling. He was doing well before. Loeffler, out of the 3 Republican candidates, performed arguably the second worst after Donald Trump, possibly the first worst. She has managed to isolate many voters who were going to show up for Collins, and she has managed to go the extreme route of, my opponent is a socialist, communist, vegan, who eats babies. Which, didn't work when they were trying to unseat Joe Biden. However, Ossoff, the Democrat in the mainline election, is basically neck and neck with Perdue, the guy who's the current incumbent Republican. And while he and Loeffler are both embroiled in stock trading scandals, Perdue has an incumbency bias that Loeffler doesn't, that makes it harder for Ossoff to win. However, Ossoff does have name recognition, but this also means he doesn't have anywhere to go. So Ossoff is theoretically maybe 2 points behind Perdue in practice, but we have no way of knowing that for sure until Election Day. Now for the big one in total. So all those things we just talked about are very important. Now for the two big ones. First off, the debate. There was a debate last night for the GOP, or the GOP and Democrats together, one for each race. Perdue did not show up for his, giving Ossoff essentially a couple hours to argue at an empty podium and basically make his opponent look like a jackass. That could help Ossoff. He didn't do a bad job, but he's also not the most compelling public figure of all time, let's be honest here. Well, Loeffler versus Warnock didn't really change anything. Here is why this is important. Essentially, if Ossoff is going to get any form of a boost, it's going to come from last night. He's not going to, we're exactly a month out from the election. He's not going to get another opportunity like that unless Perdue comes out and, like, shoots a guy. So Ossoff right now is really trying to win over some of those split-ticket suburbanite voters, and we'll get to why suburbanites are so important in a moment. He really wants to win them over, and this is his one opportunity to do so. I'm not sure if he did. I think he might have gained maybe a point, which in a tight race, which this is important for him, but that might not be enough. And this also highlights one other thing. This race is going to come down to turnout. Most people will have made up their minds. If you went and voted on election day, you would already made up your mind. You're not going to be turning out many new voters, except possibly young voters. And that leads to what I mentioned before about him not having a real opportunity to do anything. Ossoff not really having an opportunity to grow because people have already made up their minds. There was a lot of split-ticket voting in the general election. Now there's a risk of that split-ticket voting just going, we'll vote Democrat for Warnock and red for Perdue. But, and here's the key factor, like I said, it's going to come down to turnout. And what we saw is Democrats are starting to sweep suburbanite voters. And those are your turnout off-year election voters. They show up to the school board, they show up to the off-year Senate election to replace Bob for the 3rd district in the state house. They show up. That's why Democrats did so well in 2018. They got suburbanites, and they got them again in 2020. It's just there were more rural voters and more non-regular suburban voters who came out. So, if Ossoff, those guys were watching that debate, and if enough of them went, oh, well, maybe I'll go Ossoff this time. I did split ticket before. You know what? The Republicans have not made a good showing for me, so I'm gonna go for Ossoff. And straight blue on the ticket, so Warnock Ossoff. That's good for them. But we've got one last very crucial factor which is going to be in play. Biden and Trump are going to stump for their candidates in Georgia. No idea if Obama's going down. I've heard he might be. If he does, this is good news for the Democrats. But you are going to have Trump and Biden, possibly Obama, and definitely people like Andrew Yang, more marginal candidates, going around stumping for these Senate candidates. If they get the... Trump turned out a lot of people for 2020, but the number one factor right now for Republicans on why they're not voting, we went over this when we talked about the polling, is they feel like their vote doesn't matter. Not an intentional boycott to hurt the GOP, not some feeling of like, well, Trump's not on the ticket. It's the fact that Trump's telling them the election's rigged. They're feeling like the election's rigged. They were supposed to win Georgia in their minds, and they didn't. And they're going to have Trump down there, not only motivating people who hate Trump, but perpetrating the myth of, well, what's the point? I was supposed to win and I lost because in 4 days' time, it's going to be certified he lost the election. That will destroy Republican turnout if he keeps going. This was rigged, it was stolen, it's over. Republicans don't need him beating this drum for another month. That will decrease turnout. So overall, I'm going to say the environment slightly leans to the Democrats in a state whose general aura is Republican. So, default turnout, this is going to be a GOP win. Right now, I'm thinking 1-seat Democrat, 1-seat Republican. If things go as the winds seem to be pointing them in, we're looking at 2 Democratic seats. So, with all that being said, if you like the video, drop a like down below and also leave a comment. If you want to hear more from the channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell to be alerted when new content comes out. I also have a Twitter at OneManThinkTan1, the Roman numeral, link in the description, along with the video source I used for whatever imagery I'm using for this video. And most importantly, as always, have a wonderful day.